is the Horsepower Hour.
Hello once again to the Horsepower Hour, the only podcast with a salvage title. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for telling a friend about the show, by the way. That really is what keeps the wind in our sails. And you know what keeps the wind in my sails is Coy Forticus in Masterson. How you doing, buddy?
Doing great, Broseph. Doing great.
Brochacho, Andy Lilienthal is joining us from Warren Winches. How you doing, boss?
I am doing all right. If I were doing any better, I have to be three people.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about, buddy. You were telling us that this is the third podcast you've done this week, huh?
Yeah, it is. It's been podcast central in the Lilienthal household this week. So, yeah, it's been a busy week, but it's all good. I'm not even kidding. I never pass a chance up to do a podcast. I love doing them. I love being on them, and you know, it's always a good time.
I heard that, man. Obviously, you know, it's good being on our show too, you know.
Well,
some of those other low rent shows. I'm not going to name any names.
Oh boy, I think they use the same platform. But anyway, yeah.
So, Andy, what is going on in the Warren Winch world?
Oh, we got Easter Jeep Safari coming up. That's our big deal. So we've got it's one of our big events of the year. I'll be in beautiful scenic Moab, Utah for just over a week. We'll have some trail runs. We'll have two booths, one for product, one for swag, and then all kinds of other things going on. So, yeah, it's a big deal. And then, I mean, this is really, I always kind of look at Jeep Safari as the kickoff for Warren Industries show season. We have King of the Hammers, which is a big off-road race in February, but it starts out with this one. And then after this, it goes to Overland Expo West in Flagstaff. And then it goes to, there's like Jeep Beach, there's Northwest Overland Rally, BC Overland Rally, there's Overland Expo Pacific Northwest, which is new, Overland Expo Mountain Northwest, or Mountain West rather. And then there's, of course, then there's SEMA, and there's a bunch of shows in between. We do a ton of shows. I generally do about 10 shows a year. But yeah, it's a thing. So we're doing that. We're doing well as a company, which is great. We've got some new Bronco stuff that's headed out. We've got a whole new line of wheels, 6-lug wheels that fit things like Broncos, Tacomas, 4Runners, that kind of stuff. So yeah, lots of cool stuff going on.
That's amazing, dude. I didn't even know you guys were going to SEMA. I mean, I feel like some people are kind of winding SEMA down in a weird way.
We're already talking about SEMA planning now. It's crazy. I mean, it's like you start planning SEMA the day after SEMA ends. It's such a huge deal.
So yeah. I've been meaning to ask you this. Your new Warren wheels.
Mm-hmm.
Do they have any like bead retention technology, kind of anything going on?
Nope, they're not. They're not beadlock. It is a simulated beadlock, but yeah, they're available in 3 styles, 2 colors, so you can have black or gunmetal gray. 2 different lug configurations, and then they're all 17 by 8.5 with a 0 offset. They'll all work with factory lug nuts and TPMS as well. So they're the Warren Epic wheels. There's 3 styles. There's the Moon Salt, the Diamond Cutter, and the Jackhammer. They all have unique designs for Warren Industries. These aren't just a Me Too wheel style, anything like that. So lifetime structural guarantee on them as well.
Nice.
Yeah, we stand behind it. Won't put our name on it otherwise.
Well, can I get them in bronze?
You can't.
The way you prefaced I was certain already that you were you can't, and then you threw can't in there. It totally threw me.
You know, you can do anything with a can of Krylon.
Yeah.
So, but
everybody has like a powder coater or Cerakote or vinyl wrap buddy. Like that's just how it is.
So true.
Yeah. If you're still in the Pacific Northwest, I mean, St. Anne Powder Coating, they're not a sponsor anymore, but they were, and we love Roy over there. Speaking of, you guys, before we get too deep into it, we, like I said, don't have an actual sponsor for the show at this point, but we do have a fake sponsor, and I want to introduce them to you today. Family's important to us. That's why when my great-grandfather started this company, he knew exactly how he wanted to run it. And then he met a rogue tribe of Bushido ninjas in Japan, kidnapped them, brought them over here, and taught them how to do plumbing. Now, instead of dealing in silent death, they deal in great prices and quality work. Incognito. You never even know we were there. And we do want to thank Incognito for being the sponsor of the show today. As a matter of fact, you guys, I had some plumbing problems with my shower. About 5:30 last night. I did hear, I thought it was rain, but then when I woke up this morning at 6 a.m. and all of that time had passed, I knew that my shower was fixed. So I encourage you to go and find Incognito. They are just amazing.
I just want everybody to know I have never heard anything about this ad till just now. Incognito. That's usually Andy sends them to me and runs them by me. This one was fresh. I enjoyed it with the listeners.
That is truly amazing. If there isn't actually an Incognito, there will be tomorrow, I have the feeling.
I'm sure hoping so. And Andy, run it up the chain. We are looking for a real sponsor. Until then, we're going to continue to have the fake sponsors that we know and love, and we're grateful to have them. Listen, guys, we've got a lot of ground to cover today. I think we should jump right into the news. Are we ready to do that?
Yeah.
So check this out. Pretty much everyone has seen this at this point, I think. This is and hopefully there's no swearing in this. I don't want to get pulled down prematurely, but this is a Chevy Silverado that had a tornado run straight over the top of it. And somehow the Silverado landed back on its feet and kept driving.
Honestly, I think the only video being shared more than this is the Tesla going full SpaceX and jumping.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's getting shared like crazy. And I hope, I demand that Chevy gives him a new truck.
Oh, yeah.
Like they would not lose a dime from giving this guy a new truck. Toyota did it with the Paradise fires and stuff, where that guy burned up his, I think it was a Tundra, taking people out or to the hospital into safety, and they just gave him a new one. But they got so much out of that. Chevy needs to buy that truck from him and just give him a brand new Duramax, just straight across.
Yeah, either that or this is going to end up in the Super Bowl commercial next year. It actually looked like a highly produced Super Bowl commercial, something out of Twister or something.
It kind of reminds me of that old series of Toyota Tacoma advertisements where all the dudes just loved their Toyota Tacoma so much and were always talking about it, and the girlfriends kept trying to destroy it. And they're all together pushing it off a cliff, and you just see it smashing and tumbling. It lands on the beach, just kind of bounces. It's totally perfect. All the husbands and boyfriends are kick back drinking beer. I'm like, oh, there it is. And there was a series of commercials of the women trying to destroy it, and it would always be fine.
I don't remember those. I'll have to look that up. I don't know how I managed to miss that.
It would have been 2016, something like that. There was, I think, 4 of them. They kind of did a little mini series that they ran.
Okay, I'll have to look it up.
Angry girlfriends were trying to destroy Tacomas.
Well, I'm glad you're bringing up Toyota, because Toyota just dropped a very odd video, if I'm being totally honest with you. It's called The Focus Group. And again, the link to watch this is in the show notes of the podcast. So please do feel free to jump down and take a look at that if you guys are listening to the podcast. But I wanted to kind of look this over with you guys because, Andy, I know you're into oddball cars, and I don't want to, we're not going to sit through the whole 4 minutes of this, but I am going to jump to the end and see what you guys think. So here's just sort of the setup for this thing.
Oh, there it goes.
You liked it?
Here's the deal. We need ideas for the GR86.
But this time you've got a whole focus group to keep happy.
So what have you got?
Here's what they've got. Lots and lots of Slidey Boy. Okay. And I mean, pretty cool stuff too.
Yeah, the incredible.
By the way, guys, are you noticing that there's some turbo noises in this?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm noticing a lot of that.
Yeah, there's a lot of Fast and Furious gearbox action too.
All right, so they're all impressed. Now let's jump down to the end here.
Showing off the whole GR family.
You do need 3 cars to do this flying V situation.
So there you go, a little teaser right at the tail end for what appears to be the Corolla. What are they going to call it? The Corolla GR?
Yeah. Gazoo.
Right, because we're too fat in the United States to get the GR Yaris, so they're going to give us the fatter GR Corolla. So
such a bad choice. I'm sure they don't even weigh that dissimilar at the end of the day. And you know what? Having 4 doors, maybe that's better than having 2 doors. But I want the Yaris, man.
I know all the enthusiasts want the Yaris, but you know the enthusiast mentality. We all know how this goes. We all go, yeah, I want the Yaris, the 2-door, the small one with all the power. And then it comes out and they sell 7. You know? And then everyone goes, well, we should have sold the Corolla. So they're doing the Corolla.
It's because the enthusiasts want the 2-door Yaris, but not right when it comes out. I want it 12 years from now.
Exactly.
With $1,000 on it.
That's how it's supposed to
be. $16,000. And if we can't convince enough people who are, you know, the new kind of car buying enthusiast, which usually isn't the hardcore, I'm going to turn this thing into a monster enthusiast. They just thought it was a fun hot hatch. You got to convince a lot of those to get in on that. And the 2-door market is not what it used to be, in my opinion.
The funny thing is I remember I've had a number of 2-door hatchbacks, and I always wanted to be able to get the 5-door hatchback, you know, like with the Focus or with the Yaris or some of these other cars. Like, oh man, I wish I could get the 5-door, right? And now you can't get the 2-door, and of course, people want the 2-door. People always want what they can't have.
Grass is always greener.
It is, except when it isn't. But yeah, sometimes it's only greener because there's more manure on the other side. So,
yeah. Hey, speaking of manure, so a lot of my taste in cars, I'll be honest with you, feels like it comes from like my video game days. You know, playing Gran Turismo when I was a kid, playing Burnout. Playing Need for Speed Hot Pursuit. Now that Gran Turismo 7's out and the new Yaris GR is going to be in it, do you think it's going to, get kind of a younger generation pumped, or are we beyond that now? Because it seems like simulators now, racing simulators, are so serious that kids don't even really play them.
I personally, I don't think it's going to do much. I think, kids aren't the ones buying cars anyway, with the average price of a car being $44,000 these days. I mean, a Yaris GR would probably be like 30 grand. And I mean, admittedly, as much as a small hot hatch enthusiast I am, I don't know if I'm ready for a $30,000 car at this point. But then again, it's sort of out of my wheelhouse to pay more than about $4,600 for a car these days. So,
well, that's a good point. Yeah. And Jake Jaden's in the comments. He says Project Gotham was my jam.
Hey, I don't think we can let Spy Hunter and Ridge Racer not be mentioned either.
Oh, my heart beats still. Some Ridge Racer. Even the intro to Ridge Racer was just fantastic.
Battle Gear 3. That
was arcade only, but
yeah, very arcadey. But like Coy and I had some good memories from that. Like we'd be watching. Oh shoot, what was the what were those DVDs? Hot Version and
Option.
Yeah, best motoring.
Option. Yeah, best motoring. Oh, loved it. They did the best thing. They just did some of the most ludicrous things. One of my favorite best motoring videos is it was a track battle where they battled a Toyota RAV4, a Suzuki Sidekick, and a Mitsubishi Delica. It was just like, it's like my entire driveway racing at the same time. It was fantastic and ridiculous. So
one of my favorite parts of the option best motoring videos that made me love it more than a lot of the other stuff. I mean, Road and Track and all these guys, they'd get some fast new car and they'd take it out. They'd get Callaway or whatever, and they'd take it to the track, but they never crashed one.
Yeah.
Best motoring, they would put a car to the tires every so often and just be like, sorry, brake fade. And I mean, they're professional drivers, so it's like a pretty safe bet when you give them your car, but they still went out and were racing wheel to wheel against some other pro drivers, and stuff does happen. Like, I remember several videos of them crashing, and I was like, see, they're really testing the car because a pro driver just wrecked. Like, he put that thing through its paces.
It's either that or they just didn't give a shit. I mean, one of the two,
Also, yes.
Also, Coy and I talk about this quite often on the show. I just never trusted Road and Track and Car and Driver because even as a kid, I couldn't trust what they were saying. We talk about this all the time. I'm sorry, you guys, I'm going to bring it up again. The Toyota MR2 supercharged versus the Fiero. And after Toyota wiped the floor with the Fiero, they were like, for our money, we'd take the Fiero. And it's just like, okay, we know you've been paid off. We're not stupid out here. Come on.
You know what? I was a subscriber to Car and Driver since I was like 8 years old. I haven't received it in a while, but as somebody who has worked in media as well, like I never saw any of the payola thing, but I certainly did experience people who had their bias that would, they would occasionally make it into the publication. Maybe the author's granddad, founded Pontiac or something, or it's. I totally understand what you're saying. You're like, that doesn't make any sense, or the other one was like the old, and again, I don't have any idea how it works these days, but you'd see the cars that won Motor Trend Car of the Year. You're like, the Chevy Citation won Motor Trend Car of the Year. Why?
Right.
Like, come on.
And maybe it was their way of trying to help the American auto industry or something. I don't know.
I don't know either, but there are always some of those. I will say, I still wax nostalgic when I see the like Rad Report or some of these other Facebook groups that they'll scan in the comparos from the 90s that I poured over as a kid, or the 0 to 60 full road test with the comparison in the right hand corner where it had the Ford Taurus versus the Lumina versus the Maxima versus the Camry, and it was like, oh wow, yeah, okay, the Lumina was faster here, but the Taurus handled better. Well, that's not possible, but the Taurus was the quietest, and the Nissan handled the best. I still get nostalgic over all that test data.
That's fair enough.
The one that gets me nostalgic is if I ever find an old issue of Sport Compact Car. I'm just like, snatch. That was my jam.
Oh, I love Sport Compact Car. Sport Compact Car, and what was the other one? Import. God, I can't remember it. There was always two of them. There was Sport Compact Car and the other one. I can't remember off the top of my head.
There was Super Street,
Super Street.
Car. Super Street's being published again.
Yeah.
I don't know why.
Yeah.
But
Interesting. Well, I just love those two magazines. I had a subscription to both.
Super Street, like, they kind of were okay. There was a lot of like, car models and stuff, but like you'd see a car that you were interested in, or maybe they had whatever you were tuning at that time, so you'd pick it up. But I was always waiting for Sport Compact Car because it was more of a data, just raw performance stuff. And they did the Ultimate Sports Car Shootout where they would get like 10 shops, sometimes random guys, just randomly built cars, and then just do this massive shootout, just burnout competition, track, autocross, drag strip, and they do a drivability test.
Yeah.
And
that was the one.
It was like an event.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Didn't they have a twin engine Hyundai Tiburon one year?
Yes, that was the second year.
Yeah, the second shootout, they had the dual engine Tiburon.
And the reason why I know that is because the first 3 3 years, they actually filmed it and put it on a DVD. The production quality was super low, but a number of years ago, my wife actually found the DVDs of the Ultimate Streetcar Shootouts from Sport Compact Car, so I have them. The DVDs have got to be 15 years old at this point, but I
Yeah.
still pop them in once in a while and watch them. I mean, that's nostalgia, like
Yeah.
straight into your veins, you know?
Dude, I remember getting the pay-per-view of it was domestics versus imports, and it had like Steph Papadakis and what was the guy that had the Adam
Christian
Sawatari?
Rado.
What's that? Yeah.
Christian Rado.
Christian Rado and Adam Sawatari, and then they just put him up against a bunch of people that had like, you know, blown Chevys and stuff like that. And I remember, I think it was Adam Sawatari won the whole thing, and it was like, yeah, that's awesome, you know. And these guys are running stock axles. Nobody was making aftermarket axles for these things, and you know, they'd snap an axle at the line, you know. And the guy in the Mustang would, you know, 10 minutes later, you have a brand new axle in his because they've, you know, been making them forever. And the guy with the, you know, 700 horsepower EG Civic, you know, oh, I'm out because I broke the stock drive shaft or stock half shaft because that's all I got. The other one I had was, by the way, there was a import drag racing video game that I owned, and it was not was it NIRA, National Import Racing Association drag racing video game, and you could choose like a 260Z or 240Z, a Civic, a Skyline, something else. And then there was this mode where you could completely customize it, and like without thinking about physics. Like you didn't have to worry about, you could put a 36-inch tall drag radial on the front and then like a 10-inch pizza cutter in the back. And it would do I mean, the physics was there, but you could do things that were just ridiculous and make these stupid fast cars. It was stupid fun.
You bringing up Stefan I never can say his name.
Papadakis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Christian Rado and some of those guys. I feel like they were the first pro drivers that start jumping around into other like pro driver sports. Because now like some guy will be in drifting. Next thing you know, he's driving monster trucks, and then he's doing King of Hammers. Like they're really versatile at that level, and they're jumping around. Back then it was like you were a drag racer and that's like what you did, and you never left that. And then like Stefan Papadakis was like big time import drag racer, and then all of a sudden it was like, I'm a drifter, and then he just wrecked S2000s for like 2 years. Christian Rado, you know, also you know, big import drag racer. Then he's like, I now do time attack, and then came the front wing Scion, the Fwing.
Hey, I have to address this real quick, by the way. Jake Jaden says, Andy, do you still have my grip DVDs? And I don't believe so. I'm pretty sure you got those from me before I moved to fucking Florida. Just throwing that out there.
Yeah.
All right, boys. We've gone down the nostalgia road. Now let's start talking about something that's a little bit more, shall we say, relevant to our times.
Let's do it.
Overland is fucked! And today for our OLAF, you guys, we're going to be talking about the overlandification of just sort of like passenger SUVs. This is something that really got me thinking not too long ago. I mean, I was scrolling through TikTok and I saw an advertisement for this Kia Sportage X Pro. And the advertisement had them going across rugged terrain, going up a mountain, going across the beach. Of course, they also, as they were going across the beach, they had like a comb in the back that was scooping up garbage. So they got to let you know, like, we're green, we're caring about the environment, right? But it got me thinking, you guys. I mean, there's so many manufacturers now that are just sort of tarting up their regular passenger SUVs. They throw on some all-terrain tires, give it maybe a little bit of a lift, maybe not, some roof racks. You know, this is something I threw out to you last week, Andy. What's going on here, man?
I have no idea. No, I'm just kidding. So I honestly, so what I think is happening is uh, there has been an upswing in the outdoor lifestyle market. There just has. I remember when I first started at Warren, and for like the first couple of years, through about 2007 or 2008, we would talk about like what's going to be the next thing, like just hardcore trail riding, rock crawling is not approachable, all that stuff. What's this thing? What's the next generation going to be into, right? Because this, frankly, in 2008, there was a lot of people in the older generation that were still, wheeling CJs and TJs and all that kind of stuff. We're like, what's the next thing going to be? And then one day I got a call from my buddy who worked at ARB, and he says to me, kind of like in this, I remember it being in sort of a panicked, in a good way, kind of thing, where he said, dude, I've got this opportunity. REI is putting a JDM diesel 80 series Land Cruiser in their flagship store here in Seattle, and I'm putting an ARB bumper on it. Do you want to put a Warren winch on it? I'm like, are you kidding? I'm like, yeah, this is mainstream. Like, whoa, like REI. And sure enough, they did it. And they had like a little camping vignette around that. That was the moment where I thought off-road, outdoor kind of stuff like that, and the mainstream camping REI crowd, they're merging. This is going to be a big deal. And sure enough, it started to get, pardon the pun, traction. And you started seeing, the JK came out and it was this big deal. And the Outback started getting, even the Subaru Outback started getting all this kind of stuff. And so this lifestyle marketing started coming out about you can go anywhere. Listen, we've had this happen before in the 80s and 90s with the advent of the popularization and mainstream movement of sport utility vehicles.
Mhm.
My dad, I remember when I was like a 12-year-old, my dad bought a 90 Jeep Cherokee. And I remember him saying, he's like, yeah, some people think these are like yuppie mobiles and stuff like that. I'm like, really? Like it's got, it had solid axles, a 2-speed transfer case, all that stuff. Anyway, long story long, I think that what happened is this popularity of outdoor and off-road started to merge. And then, all the companies wanted a piece of this because it started getting popular among the aftermarket. The aftermarket rarely is going to have a giant sway in terms of making tons of money in the mainstream, but I think that it becomes a halo, and I think people started seeing that and they're like, well, I want to be a part of that. That's cool. Look, like we could market that. We could throw a set of Ultra-Ins on a RAV4. We could just call it the Adventure.
Mm-hmm.
And then people saw, hey, that was selling. That was kind of cool. We got to have one of those too. So Subaru had like the Wilderness and the Trailhawk Cherokee Cherokee, Patriot, and Renegade, and the list goes on.
Mm-hmm.
That's my guess.
What about
I
you,
listened
boy?
to a podcast, and the guy directly blamed FJ Cruisers for starting the Overland movement.
Oh boy.
They started in 2007, started building them, and that's kind of about when it started to rise, and then to 2014 when they stopped making them and stuff. I think it's kind of, it came from a couple angles here. Obviously, money is the manufacturers don't do things not for money.
Right.
So the end point is they're making a buck because people are interested in this, and they'd be dumb not to. But I think what happened, because I started kind of getting into overlanding 2010-ish, and I had to like go and find pictures. Like you had to be interested in it, then you had to get on a forum. And you had to like look up, and somebody would be like, "Ooh, I went to the Albert. I went," they'd have their Baja trip, but it was like you had to actually try to find this kind of like light trail stuff. And then, kind of that came on the end of when crawlers kind of were first new. I remember learning rock crawler was like a new word when I was younger, and like everybody was building a crawler. They're building a rock crawler. It's like I've never even heard of. It's just an off-roader, but that was a thing. And then that kind of faded, and then overlanding started becoming a thing. But you had to actually look for it originally, and it started to gain a little traction though. And then we had things like Facebook and Instagram come out and van life stuff. And so when you're just scrolling through your feed and somebody just posts this cool, they're at a hot spring in the middle of the desert, like nobody's not interested in that. Even if you're not into off-roading, everybody's, it goes back to like dude ranches and stuff. Like everybody wants to go out and like vacation in the wilderness, but they don't have access. They're not constantly reminded. And I believe social media kind of pushed that. And then there was tons of influencers and stuff that started doing that. There's been several like kind of YouTube fairly famous channels that were centered on overlanding type off-roading. Was it Team Expedition?
Expedition Overland?
Yes, Expedition Overland. They were kind of a YouTube almost TV series that was well produced and honestly very, it makes you watch it, you feel like getting in your car and going somewhere. Like you want to go out in the woods. Like it
Totally.
makes you feel that way. Like you can't not feel that way.
We watched their Alaska season, and I've worked with them since the beginning at Warren, but my wife and I watched their Alaska season back in, I think it was 2013, and I'm sitting there going like, I got to get to Alaska, like I've got to do it, and we did eventually, but like it was influential. But I think you brought up a really good point, something I've never really thought about, Coy, which is it was at that same time, like you said, that the crawler thing started too. And before that, I tend to think that it was a lot of people in Jeeps and Land Cruisers and stuff like that. And they were all some people were pushing it harder than others on hard trails and all that stuff, right? And they were camping along the way. They weren't calling it overlanding. They were calling it camping. But it started to get a little more hardcore with the crawlers. And then it started to get a little bit more hardcore, I guess, if you want to call it that, with the overland thing where, they were building purpose-built stuff. But yeah, there was almost this separation from just people who were going on the trails for sometimes a couple of days, few days. But there've always been those overland travelers. When I went to Overland Expo for the first time, I think it was 2009. And I remember being like, okay, we're going to a show, whatever. And I met these people who were literally driving around the world. And I was like, these people are rad as hell. Like, that is amazing. I love travel, always have. I've always loved road trips. These people were like on the ultimate road trip. And I was starry-eyed. I got bit, man. I was like, this is badass. So I think most of that is unapproachable for most people. Even taking a month off or sometimes even 2 weeks is unapproachable to many people. But people like the look of the overland thing with the racks and the max tracks and the big bumpers and all that stuff. And a lot of people build that style, but then don't actually go anywhere. And that's fine, whatever, like to each their own.
That you putting that out there kind of actually made me think of this new point as well. So if you were back in the day, you were into mud bogging or rock crawling, you could get two types of people. People who were hardcore fabricators and built this thing, and guys who just loved to wheel. Mm-hmm. So you had, kind of those two types of people, whereas overlanding, you have people who love travel. You have people who love outdoors. You have people who just love camping. You have people who like drinking. You have people that like gear and gadgets, you know what I mean? Because that's kind of overland, man. It's super gear centric. And then you got guys that are kind of more into the wheeling, but not as hardcore. They're not in hardcore wheeling. They want to do more destination wheeling, as I like to call it. Like you drive out in the desert here, there's this cool trail. It's multifaceted because it's not as, it's not it's not just mud bogging. It's not just rock crawling. It's a multi-tool of people that come do it. And when you go to these overland events, which as much as I love them, always say they're like the opposite of overlanding. Mm-hmm. Like we all get together in a field 63 feet from a paved road and camp with a bunch of porta potties and showers. Like it's just the opposite of overlanding, but I still love them. But you start talking to people, you see all those types. Like there's a guy who loves building his rig. There's the competitive people who are like, oh, I'm doing this challenge. It's going to be a GPS navigation thing, rebel rally kind of more type stuff. It brings in a ton of different angles. There's niche areas of overlanding for people to be interested in, which I think helps draw a bigger crowd.
And I think that, kind of riffing off that point is you don't need a built JK on 40s and rock jock axles to go get out in the middle of the desert and enjoy yourself.
Mhm.
You can do it in a freaking Chevy Chevette. I mean, really, your limiting factor a lot of the times is your tires. And I think to kind of come full circle on this, the auto manufacturers go, well, we'll just throw a set of Yokohama all-terrains or BFG all-terrains on this thing, and we'll just show people going hiking and in the middle of the Albert Desert and all that stuff. And I think so it tugs at that. Hey, it's that same idea as the 90s SUV craze. It's the same idea. Toyota did an ad, I think it was in the early 2000s, maybe late 90s, where there's a dude and he's on like Wall Street or something like that, and he's in his stuffy shirt and tie and whatever, and a 4Runner goes by with kayaks on the top, and he just goes, or they go, whoever it was, like, I wonder what adventure they're going on.
I remember that.
Do you?
Yes. Yes.
And it was a 4Runner advertisement, and that's exactly what's going on these days. You've got these things that have a lift kit equal to 2 stacks of napkins on top of each other. It's like, seriously, it's like 5mm lift, but you've got all-terrains, and all-terrains can make a huge difference in terms of tires. But people aren't taking these things out and doing anything they wouldn't do in any other Subaru or RAV4 or anything like that. But another inch of ground clearance isn't going to be bad, and traction tires are better in the dirt. But you look, every year it's always funny to see the amount of people that say that they take their vehicles off road, and it's something like 3% or something like that. It depends on the model, but I think that it's a big play on people wanting to get out, and you can do it. You could do it.
While we're talking about the utility of these things, is it going to go rock crawling? Absolutely not. Is it going to get you up, BLM trail and not get you stuck? Maybe that's what people are looking for. And it's interesting as we're kind of comparing these. So I want to give everybody a quick rundown here. We're looking at the Kia Sportage X Pro. We're looking at the Hyundai Santa Fe XRT. We're looking at the Subaru Forester Wilderness. We're looking at the Jeep Compass Trailhawk, the Jeep Renegade Trailhawk, the Toyota RAV4 TRD, the Honda Pilot Trail Sport. Now, Trail Sport's a new tactic to Honda, and as far as I can tell, the Pilot's the only thing that has Trail Sport, but they're in the works for like a CRV Trail Sport as well. And then the GMC Terrain AT4 was really the only thing I could find that kind of fit the bill from Chevy. Obviously, they have other, more off-roady rigs, but this was the only like crossover that I really saw that had any off-road focus to it. And then, of course, the Bronco Sport, which we all know is just a Land Rover Defender. So obviously, it's going to be good off-road. But the reason why I chose these is because they all fall in relatively the same price range. The most expensive ones are going to be the Honda Pilot at $44,000. The Toyota RAV4, as Car and Driver tested in this article, was 42, I believe. Everything else is 35, 38, somewhere around there. The Ford Bronco Sport Badland comes in at 34.5. But I'm noticing like they're all available with some type of tow package. They range widely from 3,000 pounds tow capacity to 1,600 pounds tow capacity. Surprisingly, the 3,000 pound tow capacity comes from the Subaru Forester. And as I've been looking through these, I'm thinking to myself, which of these look the most capable to me? But really, this is more your area of expertise, Coy and Andy. The Subaru Forester looks like it's ready to do some pretty serious off-roading. So does the Ford Bronco Sport Badlands. What do we think about some of these others, you guys? Give me some rankings here.
Well, I do know that the Wilderness models, especially the Outback Wilderness, it's got something like 9 inches of ground clearance or something. It's it's a lot of clearance. Again, we're not doing the Rubicon Trail in any of these, but 9 inches of ground clearance in all terrains is going to get you pretty far down the trail or wherever you're going to go. None of these are going to have a low range TK. Some of them, like the Jeep models, will have a simulated crawl mode with the CVT, where it does its CVT magical things.
And you're right. It says 9.2 inches of ground clearance, plus skid plates, plus a dual function X mode traction control system. Virtually all of these have some type of a traction control system that allows you to switch between road, dirt, mud, snow, that sort of thing.
Right. Again, you just kind of look at it like any other. If you look at it from I think a tool perspective, what's the tool designed to do? These aren't designed to go rock crawling. You're not going to be taking your Hyundai XRT to Moab and do Hell's Revenge with it. But it's going to be a really good car to take up the mountain skiing. I would take any one of these on a road trip and be super comfortable. They'll all cruise at 80 miles an hour without any issue. They're all going to be super comfy.
A couple of like the Oregon backcountry discovery routes. Those are super popular here. Washington has them. California, half the states, at least on the west side of the country. I know Oregon, Washington, California have them. I think Utah has one. A bunch of the states have these back road discovery routes. And you can buy a map or download online. They're basically transverse the states, sometimes several different ways. It's all off-road. I've done 3 of the ones in Oregon. Any of these could easily do them. I mean, and that was kind of, back in the day, that was kind of a holy grail of like local overlanding. It's like, oh, you've done the discovery route. And like, you would say that and people would like have questions about it. Honestly, the wilderness I have the most respect for that in a weird way of all these, because it's just a Subaru, but we've all seen what just a Subaru can do. And I hate Subarus as much as the next guy, but they're legit. And out of all these, man, if I had to pick one, it'd be between the RAV4, the Subaru. The Bronco's in there, or baby Bronco, whatever we want to call it. I know it's just a discovery, but I have seen some videos of those being pretty legit, and I think there's going to be a good aftermarket for those compared to the rest of these. So while I hate it because there's a better Bronco, and you know how I am, if there's a better version of the car you own, I can't own the lower one. Like if there's a better performance one, I have to have that.
Yeah, you're not a V6 Camaro kind of guy.
It will dig at my insides for the entire time I own that car. Even if the performance is negligible and I'm probably going to mod past that anyways. Like I couldn't buy a non-Rubicon Jeep, even if I knew in 5 or 6 years I was putting 60s under it. So there would really for some reason I can't, my brain won't do that. Maybe oftentimes that's the poor financial mistake on my half.
I tend to think that of this crop, I think that the most capable, anyway, I think the most capable is going to be the Trailhawk Cherokee. You can get factory rear, you can get a factory rear locker on it.
I'm sorry, Andy, we're not looking at the Cherokee. We're looking at the Renegade.
Oh, okay. You had the Cherokee next to it. So
that was the Compass.
Oh, I'm sorry. My mistake.
I also agree out of all these that the Cherokee would be.
Yeah, I'm sorry. The Cherokee and the Compass look so much alike too. Both of the Jeep models are going to have that trail rated deal, and that's more than just a badge. It does pass a water fording thing. It has to pass a set of different things. I don't remember the full criteria, but
and here I've got the Cherokee pulled up. I thought that this had been priced out of this group of vehicles we were looking at, but I could be wrong.
Okay. I can't imagine it's any more than the RAV4, but I could be wrong for a Trailhawk.
Well, let's just see real quick while you guys are thinking.
So, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like
you know what? I'm sorry, Coy, I'm interrupting again. You're right. This falls squarely into the price point. You're 100% right. So, the Trailhawk Cherokee is probably going to be your pick among all of the like 40-ish sub 40K overlandy type packages of these vehicles. Is that what I'm hearing?
If we're just talking capability, I
Mhm.
think the Trailhawk's probably pretty hard to beat. Now I have seen people do some gnarly things in Subarus. And again, so much of this is driver ability too. But you know, if you've got the same driver in all these vehicles, my money's on the Trailhawk. Cherokee.
Got it. And then when we're talking Trailhawk, I mean the Cherokee is something. It's a different format. When you're looking at like the Renegade or the Compass, those are front wheel drive platforms that have all wheel drive systems that are available, obviously in the Trailhawk. And like you said, I mean, to be labeled a Trailhawk, they have to be able to go through water and certain terrains and stuff like that. But what I'm wondering is if either of you as off-road enthusiasts would ever consider a quote unquote front wheel drive layout vehicle to take off-road.
No, I mean, not specifically. Like I have a '98 Honda CRV. It's a front wheel drive vehicle that when it loses traction, it shoots some power to the back and, you know, fixes it. But it would not be my choice if I'm going, listen, I want to build an off-road vehicle. I know I'll get a Honda CRV. Like, no, that's not what I would do. There are people that do it, but that's not me. I'm a slave to low range. I'm sorry. I love low range. I love being able to go slow and have all the control and all that stuff. So, but if I was buying a vehicle that I regularly drove long distances in bad weather, occasionally went down, you know, trails to get to somewhere to go camping, and I didn't need low range, then I think this genre is perfectly suited for that. And while I think that the Cherokee is probably the most capable off-road, it's not necessarily what I would buy. But I think if we're just talking straight up capability, I think that's the most capable.
I have to agree if we're including that one. uh, I have to say that out of as far as like getting a front wheel drive, all wheel drive layout, I'm with Andy. If it doesn't have low range, I can't consider it a true off roader. Like it,
Mm.
there's difference between doing well off road because of and in spite of. And you do off road without a low range, it's in spite of, not because of.
That's a super
So
good point, Coy.
that's where I'm at on that. And people who build, you know, front wheel drive / all wheel drive cars for off road, I feel like it's not because there were options and they chose that. That was what they chose, and then they got into this. And we've all fallen on our sword this way.
Yeah.
Especially the streetcar guys. Like somebody's got a four-door Jetta, and next thing you know, your buddy's building a four-door Jetta as a track car. And you're like, you know, there's better vehicles that you could get in this price range. He's like, this is what I already have. And then he full on becomes a Volkswagen guy. He's doing all this stuff. And it's like, or you could have got a Golf two-door, like, but they're kind of in already because they already had that vehicle. And I feel like that happens a lot with these. They're like, oh, it's kind of off-roady, and they get it, and then they kind of get into off-roading, and they're like, oh, I'm putting a lift kit, tires, and rooftop tent. And next thing you know, they've sunk $12,000-$15,000 into something that really can never step to the next level when they're ready to. So, I mean, everybody usually starts out kind of doing the gravel roads and doing a dirt road. At some point, they want to go to, you know, an off-road park or something. And these, you'll see them there occasionally, but man, it's hard on them and to
Yeah.
do that stuff with no low range. And they're not able to make that next step into that. So if you have something that has low range, usually you can mod them or at least get a big enough tire on them. You can make that next step into like a, you know, kind of a light off-road past just overlanding.
I think that's again, like you're spot on. I think that I will be the last guy on earth to ever say you should never do that. Like, don't do that. I can't believe you modified a Toyota RAV4. Like, I'm like, hey man, if that's what you dig, that's awesome, right? But yeah, but if your goal is to go farther on the trail and do more difficult things and get to places that are harder to get to, if you insist on doing it in a Hyundai Tucson with all-wheel drive versus I don't whatever, a 4Runner or whatever, like I'm not saying you can't do it, but you can boil a single serving of spaghetti in a 52-gallon drum of water too, but why would you do that?
Exactly. Another case study that this dude was super happy, and it was super interesting to watch his videos. He was on the forums. He had an FJ Cruiser. They did make 2-wheel drive FJ Cruisers, not a ton of them, and they weren't really sold in the Northwest. Toyota actually markets certain models for different places. So he had a 2-wheel drive FJ Cruiser, and then he got on the forums like, how can I make it better off-road? Everybody was like, sell it and buy a 4-wheel drive one. That's the number one thing you can do, and it'll be night and day difference. And he's like, yeah, can't do that. So he put a limited slip in it, that he lifted it. The lift kits are essentially identical. Did a bumper with a winch and stuff, and like it looked good. It looked just like a 4-wheel drive one minus some CV shafts. And he'd go to off-road parks and off-road it, and like I won't say that I was surprised at a lot of the stuff he was able to do, but it never really was. He was never able to grow past that, and a lot of people get caught in that, and it's cool. Like I find it interesting and unique. I'll stand there and talk to you about it. I have tons of questions. I'll think it's super awesome. I myself wouldn't get into that, and I feel like a lot of this recently, it feels like it's surged even harder, especially with the manufacturers coming out. And I'll straight up say that COVID for sure made a difference. I've talked to some local sheriffs and Forest Service people and stuff. And yeah, people got out way more during COVID. Like they had time off working from home. And of course they got out more. And then once people get out more pictures go up, more stories, more Instagram, which encourages more. And I mean, if you talk to there were places that were getting kind of overran, and a lot of odd places. I mean, Moab had to close, but essentially, and not let anybody go there for a while, because everybody was like, oh, perfect. We got our perfect Moab time. Like I have 6 weeks off or whatever.
So Coy, did we literally go from overlanding to overrun?
There are spots. Yeah. There were places in like Nevada where all of a sudden roads that had 2 cars a week on them had 10 cars a day going to some place. I mean, and that's a huge difference.
I think that the classic, almost case study example of this is the super well-known Alabama Hills in California. For those of you who aren't familiar with it, it's a absolutely stunningly beautiful area of the Sierras, right off of Highway 395. And when I say right off of Highway 395, you like take a right, and I don't know, half mile, quarter mile off a major U.S. highway is this stunningly beautiful area below Mount Whitney. It was open camping, free camping, dispersed camping, all this. Well, it started to get popular on social media because it made it look like you were out in the middle of nowhere. And it also just has become like a Sprinter van parking lot. It's unbelievable. And it's become overrun. And they actually just announced they were basically closing it to open camping, and that you had to get permits and all this. And it's probably the best thing for the area too, because it was a Instagram influencer's wet dream. You didn't have to go too far from LA. It made it look like you were in the middle of nowhere. And by the way, you could just about walk to the convenience store for your second round of IPA. So
years ago, I had
I'm sorry, I didn't laugh at that. Sorry, Coy.
I had
Andy, I didn't laugh at that because that was so spot on. Like that was unbelievably spot on, especially in Oregon. Like it's close enough to where you can go and get another IPA, hit up the dispensary. Not that you wouldn't be bringing your own weed with you. Anyway, sorry, Coy.
It's funny because years ago, I was making fun of overlanding like before it was cool to make fun of it. And I had a satire Instagram account that I should have put more effort into it because I'd have 1 billion followers now, but I would take and like there was a beach you could park on that was literally anybody could drive on it, and you could drive down to this river, and then out in the distance you can see this house on top of this cliff, but that's the only thing. So I would take like a picture where you could just see the house kind of like off on the corner, and then I'd do some post about how desolated I was and post it. You know, you try and get one, like pull over on the side of the road, get all trees with a McDonald's sign in the corner. We had a guy get stuck in the snow, and then we did some kind of dumb thing. I don't remember exactly how we did it. We got like 5 snatch blocks in front of this truck, all like just as many snatch blocks on this winch line as we could. This thing made like 8 direction changes. And then we just post dumb stuff like that. And we thought it was funny. It got like 0 likes, but uh, I was too soon. And that's
ahead of your time.
Yeah. Sadly, that's kind of what some of this has turned into. This makes me a Grinch, I think, for saying this, but I've been saying this for a while. Every time people be like, "Oh, we're doing a noob run, or we're doing like a noob training," I'm always like, "Stop trying to get new people into your sport, because you will ruin it for yourself." Like, once your sport is big enough, don't make it too big.
Ooh, that is you could do an entire horsepower hour about that, because there are so many more people getting into this, and you go out, if you've got the coin to go out and buy a brand new Bronco, brand new Wrangler, a lot of other 4-wheel drives, you don't have to have the chops like you used to. My wife is writing a story on, my wife's a writer, and she's doing a story basically on analog driving versus all the having vehicles with all the traction controls and all that stuff. But my point being is if you dump $55,000 on a Wrangler Rubicon, even as a noob, you can get out there. You can go so much farther than you could have 20 years ago in a TJ without traction control. I mean, it's just unbelievable. I was in a Wrangler JL with a 3-inch lift, 37-inch tires, which isn't a big deal anymore, apparently. And I was going down this obstacle at Moab called High Dive. And then you have to go up this thing called Upchuck. And another guy who works in the off-road industry, he's like, have you driven this before? I'm like, no. He's like, have you driven the JL in crawl control, or whatever they call it, descent control? I'm like, no. He's like, dude, he's like, just hit the descent control, and all you'll have to do is aim it. And I'm like, okay. So I push the descent control, and it works the brakes for you. It works the transmission gearing for you. All I got to do is choose the line. That's it. I don't have to worry about throttle modulation. I don't have to worry about brake modulation. I don't have to worry about any of that stuff. And I'm just like, this is too easy.
Yeah.
And so with the manufacturers making vehicles as capable as they are, it encourages more people to get out onto the trails. So there has to be, if there's more people on the trails, there needs to be more education about trail etiquette. What you do on the trails, what you don't do on the trails. Don't throw your trash onto the trails. Stay on the trails. Who's got the right of way going up hills, that kind of stuff. Like, that education needs to happen if we're going to be turning our trails into more popular places, because otherwise, mark my words, they'll get shut down.
Yeah. You have to make new trails to spread out this increased use. But I mean, I think anybody who's even a little bit into off-roading knows getting new off-road parks and new trails, they only get, at this point in America, they really only get closed. It's rare when new stuff comes.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people who you're saying, they just show up with a Rubicon that they bought ready to go. They don't understand a lot of that stuff. Even a lot of these guys in the more soft roader stuff, that these overland SUVs that are being pushed, they don't really understand how easy it is for the Forest Service to put a gate up. Just because when you look at the BLM map of your state and be like, man, it's Oregon. Literally 2/3 of the state is BLM land or something like that. Like, there's more BLM land than there is private land.
Yeah.
And you know what? This
They'll
is
close access to it.
They will.
All reasons.
When I moved to Oregon, I was 26, I think, 26 years old. I'm 43 now. When I moved out, and they talked about open land and BLM land and all this, and I'm like, I lived in Wisconsin and Minnesota. I'm like, what is that? And they're like, what do you mean? I said, what is BLM land? What do you mean open land? They're like, well, you can go kind of wherever you want to, and it's not really owned by anybody. And I'm going, I don't gotta get it. What do you mean? And they're saying, well, on BLM land, there are trails and all this kind of stuff you can just go use. And I was like, that's crazy. Because like basically it's like anywhere. I always think, I'm from the upper Midwest, so I always generally think anywhere east of the Dakotas, like there is no open land. There is no BLM land. Everything is private. So if you want to go off-roading, generally you're at an off-road park. If there is an off-road park. Growing up, I always said I wanted a pickup truck, and my mom was like, "Where are you going to use that?" I said I wanted to go off-roading, and she's like, "Where are you going to go off-roading?" I remember like, I don't know,
Construction sites.
Yeah. Which maybe I did that as a kid anyway, but
urban off-roading trips, as we used to call them.
Yes,
I do have to say, you guys, that's a new thing for me being down here in Florida. A lot of this is not public land, it's private land. Fortunately, we've gotten, connected with a lot of people here. So I have some hunting spots that are set up and stuff like that. But yeah, it's mostly privately owned in the South. And that was not a thing I had ever thought about, coming from Oregon. In Oregon, you had public lands that you go on, and it's not a thing in every state.
I guess we should hit that just so people can understand, because not every listener, obviously the show is from the Northwest, or the West, I should say, actually. So I don't know dates, and I may screw this up a little bit, but essentially when the American government was trying to get people to move west, they owned all the land. You could come and buy some, and like timber companies would buy stuff, but they just said, we have all this land. If you want to go over there and settle this land, we'll give you 40 acres. And then if you have a farm or whatever you do there, I think it was after 2 years, we'll give you another 40 acres, adjoining you. And you just picked it, wherever in this land, you just pick it. And then after, I think 4 years, it was now your land. You got a deed. Obviously all the good stuff got taken, but eventually what is out there is what's left over. You'll find old homesteads out in that, because that homestead didn't last. Like those people moved away eventually, and this is all just leftover land, essentially. And I mean, there are states, I think it's like Wyoming and Utah, it is the majority of the state is BLM. And I mean,
Right.
Oregon, even Oregon, I'm pretty sure over half the state is BLM, which stands for Bureau of Land Management. And then there's also, just to be clear, in case someone,
Yep.
that was the original BLM. It stands for Bureau of Land Management. They're happy to gate everything, and Bureau of Land Management is a federal entity. Then obviously there's National Forest, and then Forest Service, and state forest, and it all gets broken down even more into those groups. But in the West, I should say, there is a lot of that, and we've grown accustomed to using it, but it gets taken away easily. And that is one fear of mine, with more people having access and getting into off-roading, with whether it's Instagram, social media, COVID, whatever you want to blame it on, that gets restricted more than it has been. Because a lot of these spots, people may necessarily don't even have to do anything that wrong. Some of them, they're actually looking for a reason to close it already.
Right.
And you just have to give them a little something. It doesn't have to be much.
Yeah.
Well, in Oregon, it's going to be heroin needles and,
Well,
random shootings. But yeah,
that's not, that's another thing I have pointed out. A lot of the reasons these places get shut down is on the locals to that area. They're the ones
Right.
up there burning pallets and garbage and stuff, and shooting up their old appliances. That's not me, who came in there from across the state to check out this hot spring. Like,
No kidding.
that was
Right.
you that lived around there. So that's on you.
Yeah.
And you ruined it for everybody, including yourself. But we all have to take responsibility in that, for sure.
Yeah, God, I've been up to, can't tell you how many times I've been up to like Tahuya, and I live in Portland. Tahuya is 3 hours north of here, and we'll go up there, go camping around that area, and then we'll go to the off-road area, and you'll go to, they have an off-road play area specifically called that, and there'll be like mattresses and pallets and trash, and we'll help pick it up sometimes. Well, we'll pick it up if there's there, but we were there one time, and there was a couple just piling pallets in their pickup because somebody decided to dump a bunch of trash.
Yeah. The pallet thing, everybody likes to take them up there and burn them because pallets burn amazingly. It is one of the biggest asshole fucking moves in the world to take something that has literally not
Nails.
that much surface area board and has literally, I don't know, 50 nails in it, and then burn it. And it's usually not like in a burn pit. It's just in a pullout. And a lot of times it's when there's snow on the ground or something, and then there's just a pile of nails there later. And it drives me insane when I see guys going up with a load of pallets. I'm just like, pick any other trash, not something with the most nails per square inch as possible.
Right.
That's actually why I save up all of my packing peanuts and foam insulation, is because Coy told me that. That's what I prefer to burn.
I've been saving Tesla batteries, but
yeah, smart. Hey, you guys, we could go on about this. Like, this could occupy an entire episode. I have 2 more questions for you about this overlandification movement of what we've seen here today. And I think this is a pretty good selection of overlandy SUVs that you wouldn't normally think about taking off-road. I want to ask you 2 more questions. One, which one of these do you think looks the best to you? Like, when you're looking at it and you say, that looks pretty tough, which of these is going to be your favorite?
You go ahead, Andy. This isn't even, I don't know how to think about this.
Pass. You're up. No, I'm just
Okay.
kidding. I'm just kidding.
I mean, I'll go first if you guys want me to.
Sure. Why don't we go down the line? You go first.
I got to say, I don't know if it's the most capable or not, but the Toyota RAV4 TRD, I mean, that thing looks bad ass. It looks so good, and it looks so tough, and it looks so off-road ready. I don't know how off-road ready it is. My second choice might surprise you. It's actually the Subaru Wilderness. I do think that this thing actually looks pretty cool. I don't like the way the headlights go like above the hood with the lines. That's a little bit weird, but at the same time, it's got a very tough look to it, and I kind of dig it. Now, Coy, you have to.
I have not liked those Wilderness since they came out. I don't like them. I like the performance of them. I hate the looks, and they have these weird copper accents, which no matter what color it is, it doesn't go with any of the colors they do. This one, I don't see any of the copper accents, but maybe they've changed something. I know all the original ones, the first wave that came out, had these weird copper accents.
Yeah.
It drove me nuts.
That might be an Outback Wilderness thing.
Mm-hmm. I was about to say the same thing. Outback, this is the Forester.
And that plastic bumper on the front, and I get it. That's an unpainted, just dyed black ABS trim piece that's probably easy to replace when you dent it and stuff. It looks, it bumps me and puts me off, and I can't stand it. The fender flares on it look unfinished. Like, they come down, and then they kind of just cut off at an angle 3 inches before the arch ends, and I'm like, finish your flare. Like,
God, cool. I can't agree with you more. I can't stand. I love everything about the Wilderness Subarus except the way that they look. This is one of these vehicles that if I could walk out blindfolded to it and get in it and drive it, it'd probably be amazing.
Fellas, I don't want to hear which one you think is dog shit. I told you which ones were my top 2 picks. Okay. And now you're shitting all over it. Okay. So now I feel like the asshole. Go ahead and tell me what your picks are. The good, not the bad, the good. That's what we do here.
Okay. The good. Go ahead, Corey.
So the good for me, I got to agree with Andy on the RAV4 TRD. My wife has the generation before this that doesn't look near this good. These came out and I was like, oh, I should have waited another year. Like, I know it's not a super awesome, badass off-roader, no doubts, but it looks good. I like the way they look. Even if I wasn't off-roading it, like my wife drives a 2016 RAV4 hybrid, I would way rather we'd wait and got one of these, just a better looking vehicle in general. It's very aesthetically pleasing for me. The back end has a good look. The flares look good. It has like real angular flares. I like it.
By the way, the hybrid versions of these are like rockets. They're super fast for what they are. They're like, the 0 to 60 on them is something like 5 seconds or something. It's because it's got that hybrid assist. So
yeah, they're not bad, and the hybrids are incredibly good in the snow. My wife, it snowed here. When was it? I don't know, 2017 or something. We had quite a bit of snow. My wife works on call at a hospital, and it's like a 25-mile drive. She was coming home and she calls me and I'm like, how are the roads? I know there's snow out there. And she's like, I don't know what's going on. Like, there's just people in ditches everywhere. And it's just like, I'm driving normal. And I'm like, you need to slow down. So she's like, I don't know what everybody's problem is. I'm like, look, you got a great all-wheel drive system and you got some pretty good tires in the snow. You got some good all seasons. Don't be confident. Like, I'm trying to like coach her into, but it's just, it was rock solid in the snow. Not snow wheeling, but just, snow on the road. And then my second, I hate to, because I also hate those baby Broncos, but it looks kind of good. I'm not gonna, it doesn't look bad. But because there's a much better Bronco, I just can't like it, but it looks good. It's a weird place to be in. What about you, Andy?
Well, my choice is going to be probably not surprising to anybody that really knows me, but I've always liked the looks of the Jeep Renegade. I still do. I know they don't sell a whole lot of them. I just like the looks. If we're going on looks alone, I've just always liked them. I like a smaller vehicle. I like the styling. It's clean. It doesn't look overly bulky in any respect. So from a styling standpoint, I'm going to go there. Which Kia were we looking at, by the way?
We're looking at the Kia Sportage X Pro.
Oh, okay, yeah, not that one. I'm gonna have to go with the Honda Pilot as my second choice in terms of looks. I think it looks good. I think that again, clean lines. It's got enough off-road without like body cladding everywhere, like the RAV4 and the Wilderness. I'm a more is less. No, less is more. I'm a less is more kind of guy, so I like the cleaner look on this one personally. So yeah, those are my top two styling preferences.
All right, so now that we've done that, I want to know which of these vehicles you think is going to have the most aftermarket support over the next 2 to 3 years.
Oh, Bronco Sport, probably.
You think so?
I think so. I'm going to guess, and I'm just jumping in here. I don't think any of them are going to have a ton. I just don't see people modifying. Actually, it's probably going to be the Wilderness. But what else are you going to do to it? I mean, how much further up do you need to go with it? So you can do the usual Subaru things to it, engine-wise. But like, oh, okay, it's already got 9.2 inches of ground clearance. How much more ground clearance do you want? Like, I guess you can start putting bigger tires on it and whatnot, and then go up. So you've got 11 inches of ground clearance. But when everybody knows, like, everybody knows now that you put more than a couple of inches of a lift on a CV joint, it's not going to last as long.
And so when you said the typical modifications to a Subaru, did you mean the head gaskets?
Head gaskets and vape juice, yes.
Yeah.
Purple hoodies. I fully agree with Andy. It's going to be the Bronco Sport and or the Subaru. I can't really say which one has more. I would lean towards the Bronco, but I don't know. I mean, and then like if we're considering the Cherokee, that's I don't think more than those, but it could be in there.
The Cherokee and the Renegade and even the Compass, I mean, those have been out the longest. And I mean, literally, there are companies that make winch bumpers for the Renegades. Rocky Road Outfitters makes a bunch of stuff for it. Daystar makes a bunch of stuff for it. I know there's a guy on Instagram, I think it's Snoopy Jeep, and he's got a white Renegade with a lift on it, all-terrains, Daystar bumper. He's got a Warren Xeon winch on the front of it. I mean, like, he's outfitted it. And it's like, if it's not going to crawl down the trailer, you can at least drag yourself across everything with the winch. But so I know that the Jeep stuff always has an aftermarket. Maybe the Compass probably has the least amount of aftermarket out there.
I'd say the Hyundai Santa Fe probably is going to have the least.
I guess within the Jeep lineup, it would have the least.
Okay.
But yeah, I would agree. The Hyundai Santa Fe, and I know we're all about the positivity on this show. I haven't warmed up to the new Hyundai corporate look fish mouth kind of thing.
Me either. I love the new turbo stuff Hyundai's doing.
Yes,
I really like the direction they've taken with everything but their freaking headlights.
Yeah, I'm the same way. Like the Sonata is like personifies all that Hyundai look these days. And I'm just not 100% sold on it, but I don't see much aftermarket coming for this or the Kia at all. And probably not much for the Honda either, unless you can put a sweet VTEC controller on it.
I'm honestly surprised that you guys haven't said anything about the RAV4, because I mean, it feels like anything that's got a TRD badge on it these days gets some kind of aftermarket attention. I mean, I would have said maybe like the Ford Bronco Sport first and the Wilderness second, but the Wilderness and the RAV4 TRD are a little bit of a toss-up for me, because I feel like it could go either way. So actually, I don't want to make this segment any longer than it has to be, but I have to ask both of you, especially you, Coy, you're a Toyota guy. Why do you think the RAV4 TRD is not going to have the aftermarket following?
Because the trade-in value is good enough to get a TRD Tacoma or
like Forerunner. Yeah,
you're going to get into it, and then you're just going to bump. You're just going to bump. I think I've seen several people do that already.
I think that's a really good response.
I have to go off topic a little bit. When you mentioned these headlights on the Hyundais, I kind of came up with this theory live during the show that the way to make like a car pop iconic is you have to have like perfect headlights and taillights. So just think of all the like JDM God cars. You got like Skylines. You know exactly what those taillights, S2000s, you know exactly what those taillights look like. Supras, you know, you could take a pencil and draw that taillight right now, and we can start bumping through any of these. And this even kind of goes into off-road stuff. Like think of Jeep headlights in that.
Yes,
it's
round headlights, square taillights. Even that Renegade has the round headlights and square taillights.
Even like FJ Cruisers, the Land Cruisers, like they obviously copied that from Land Cruisers, but it's got an iconic look. I think that's the way to make sure a car is a for sure hit, is you got to nail the headlights and taillights right.
Let me ask you guys this then. This is the Kia Stinger. I've always liked the way the Kia Stingers looked.
Let's see the taillights though, bro.
Oh, sorry. Let me pull that up here.
They look good from this angle, but just look at the back end.
Here, I got it. Give me a second. There you go.
Yeah,
it's
I don't think they're bad.
It's not bad, but it's like they're not iconic. That's a Ford Taurus or Ford 500 tail end. Like
they kind of look like
nail the taillight.
They're giving me like a Dodge. Yeah, I was going to say Dodge Charger taillight is what that's given me.
I also would like to ask you, and listen, I've driven the Kia Stingers and they're a lot of fun, but I can't tell you the last time I've seen one.
Oh yeah, no, because they were way too expensive. I mean, they're called a Kia. So I mean, who's honestly going out and getting, 3.3 liter twin turbocharged. They run 12s from the factory. If you get the all-wheel drive version, they're a very capable performance car. But I think that at this point, that brand name has hindered the Kia Stinger. They're an absolute banger, but they're expensive, and then they're a Kia. And I think that that's really been a problem for them. Now, had they done a Kia Stinger Adventure?
Oh, let's just drop one of those twin turbo V6 in a Rio, and now we got some good times.
Oh, dude, now you're talking. Yeah. All right. Well, you guys, I mean, this literally has been the longest Overland AF we have ever had, but it's been awesome, dude. This conversation's been amazing. Andy, I'm so glad you were here to talk about this, because this is something I've been mulling around for weeks. You know, I mean, just seeing these different manufacturers try to jump on this bandwagon. And quite frankly, I think we're going to see more of it. I don't think we've seen the peak yet.
I agree.
Coy, what do you think?
Absolutely. It's not over for sure.
Okay. I know I said I only had 2 questions left, but I have one more for you. If you could pick any vehicle, like currently manufactured vehicle to see an Overland version of, hit me with it.
Oh,
I honestly need more time. If anything made in America, Overland vehicle, they throw an Overland badge and trim and locker and lift and all-terrain tires, dude, I'm going like Ford Mustang. Like I'm going Like we all love like buggy Miatas, you know, or maybe Miata, like an Overland Miata.
Oh,
You know what I'm saying? I'm going like little guy. You know what I mean? I want.
yeah.
Yeah,
I was going
want
to say
something like
Mitsubishi
that.
Mirage, but whatever.
Yeah, an Indy Miata off-road. I'm actually thinking the Ford Transit vans, those little teeny tiny panel vans. What if you had a all-wheel drive version of one of those and you could just make it like a single person overlanding expedition vehicle?
You know what? You extracted the answer I didn't know I had out of me, because as the owner of a four-wheel drive Mitsubishi Delica van, nobody makes anything that is that size and all-wheel drive or four-wheel drive, other than you get a Chrysler Pacifica, which is a great vehicle, or a Toyota Sequoia.
Yeah.
Like, that's it. Why can't I buy just like an all-wheel drive Transit Connect? I can get an all-wheel drive Transit, but then I'm also going to be living in it because I've sold everything I have. So,
and it's confirmed you can put a twin bed in one of those.
Yeah. By the way, on that topic too, I guess Mercedes-Benz announced they're discontinuing the four-wheel drive system on the Sprinter van and only going to an all-wheel drive. So, but that's probably, more people probably don't use the low range and are using just the all-wheel drive. But I'm with you. Give me an all-wheel drive Transit Connect, or an all-wheel drive Ram ProMaster, or an all-wheel drive Nissan NV, whatever it is, 200 or whatever. I can't remember the small one, but I would buy that tomorrow. Or if Mitsubishi would just bring over the current D5 Delica, even if it was an automatic only, I'd go buy one.
I gotta say, when you brought up Mirage, Overland version of Mitsubishi Mirage, I was like, they did that already. It was called Evo 1 through 5.
I do have to say, since so many of the companies are doing the Olaf treatment, there was an ad for a Mitsubishi Mirage hatchback in another market that they had a rooftop tent on the top of it, and they were like camping at the beach. I'm like, I sort of love it because it's so wonky. Like in the US, people are just looking at it, going like, you gotta be kidding me. But when we were in like New Zealand and Australia, and you'd see these like, micro compact car. The rooftop tent is larger than the car is. Anyway.
Hey, you just coined a phrase, by the way. They were Olaf vehicles. I love that. Coy, did you catch up on that?
I did. Which I gotta say, I'm gonna pick one for Andy. What you really need is an overlanded like Kia Soul.
They did. I think they did a SEMA vehicle a few years ago where it was like something like that. You know what? If Kia had just put all-wheel drive in that thing at some point, it would have been more appealing to me. But you keep getting these vehicles, by the way, like this Toyota CHR, for example. That's like, this would be so cool if it was all-wheel drive. But nope, front-wheel drive only. Sorry. The Kia Soul is the same way. Like, oh, hey, how about Scion Veld XB? Same thing. Like, oh, this would be a really cool little adventure. Oh, no, sorry, we're going to go front-wheel drive only on that. So,
Nissan, was it Nissan Cube, the weird fishbowl
window? Yeah, same thing.
I always thought that would be a cool, like, if they made that all-wheel drive. Like,
yes,
it looks like a miniature van, and the cool window that wraps around would be super cool.
Yeah.
So I don't want to, we have our Deal Doob coming up, which is not really the classic Deal Doob, but it leads into the conversation we're having right now. So want to end the segment real quick. This has been our Overland AF, and you guys, I mean, seriously, I'm so impressed with this conversation. This has been so productive and so interesting. Like, I just want to clip this whole segment and just post it as its own podcast because people need to hear this. This was just, seriously, props to both of you for really diving into this, and I appreciate it. And all of you out there listening, this has been our Olaf.
Overland is fucked!
So I wanted to stop us real quick before we got into this too much, because now you're starting to get into the territory that really pisses me off. Like a turbo all-wheel drive Scion XB, that is the most bonerific thing I've ever heard. Like if let's see here, they were building those back. When did the XB come out, Coy? That was 2003, 4?
Yeah, early
2004 was the first model year. I had an 05. Yeah.
So imagine they had just, and you know what? I want a turbo version, but let's just pretend for a second that they had like a 2ZZ GE model that was all-wheel drive in those. Ugh, are you kidding me?
They sold them with all-wheel drive in other markets, but instead of going up in displacement, it went down to like a 1 liter.
That's unbelievable. That's the wrong way. I don't know if you knew that, Andy, but that's the wrong direction.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, that's not the direction I want to go. Those are rookie numbers. You got to pump those numbers up.
I will allow it, but I need an equal increase in PSI being forced into that.
Either that or one for the front wheels and one for the back wheels. Just saying.
Yes, I will always honor the dual power.
Yes, thank you. And there's so many different vehicles that I look at where I'm like, if you had made this all-wheel drive and turbocharged, it would have absolutely smoked everything out there. The last generation of Celica, people argue that it might be the generation that killed the Celica. It actually wasn't a bad vehicle. Like the Celica GTS in that same, mid 2000s range, that was a good car. But had they made the actual like all track or GT4 in that model, I think it would have carried Toyota through in the racing world. And I understand, listen, I don't work for a manufacturer. I get that. And so there's a lot of different things that are going on, a lot of reasons why they don't do these things. But man, I look at some of these vehicles and think to myself, if you put just the smallest amount of engineering into this and made it all-wheel drive and turbocharged and called it a motorsports vehicle, holy shit, dude. Like how much could it really have increased the cost? And again, I'm not an automotive engineer, so it might be $1 bazillion, who knows? But at the same time, Andy, you brought up the Mitsubishi Mirage, the current Mitsubishi Mirage. Imagine if we had a turbo, again, something small, 1.6 liter, 1.4 liter. Look,
Mitsubishi has the 4M, not the 4M40. That's a 2.8 liter. I can't remember that off the top of my head. It's the 1.5 liter turbo engine that's in the Mitsubishi Eclipse Cross. It makes enough grunt, but you wouldn't even have to do that. Just put a 2 liter normally aspirated engine in it. Give it 120 horsepower. That car weighs 2,300 pounds or something like that. But the other one is like Toyota has, or somebody made a rally-esque looking CHR in yellow with rally mud flaps, and the thing looked awesome. But I'm like, it's still got the 1.8 and a CVT, and it's like no fun. They sucked the fun right out of that car.
The Honda CRZ is a perfect example of that too. Such a good-looking body, but it was only available in that hybrid front-wheel drive, slow as fuck. I mean, people did do some swaps into those, but what an absolutely missed opportunity. And, since we're talking about it, so at the beginning of the show, we talked about Toyota kind of was introducing like their GR line. And obviously the Corolla GR is going to be part of that. That's got a 3-cylinder. It's a 1.6 3-cylinder. It makes almost 300 horsepower. It's an absolute barnstormer. And now, granted, there's some very new technology that allows those things to happen. But at the same time, I mean, I don't know, man. I'm looking at some of these small, again, going back to like the Fiat 1.4 turbo. They sound great. They don't make a whole ton of power. But if you would put one of those, all right. So throwing this out there, the Fiat 500 Abarth, what if that had been all-wheel drive?
That's a perfect example of a car that's not the fastest car in the world, but you know how stupid fun that car was. Like I reviewed the Cabrio version of it, which with the top down you couldn't see out of because it blocked the rearview mirror. But I'll tell you
Genius.
With the top down,
Mambo Italiano, Andy, Mambo Italiano.
Ciao Bella. But I'll tell you what, my buddy and I took that car out with the top down, looked like a bunch of total weirdos in this thing, but it sounded so fun. We're both laughing like schoolboys. You just wham, pop, 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 bam. I mean, it's like, this thing is so much fun. I don't care if that had all-wheel drive or not. It was just stupid fun. But it was imperfection. But as somebody once said, nobody buys anything Italian out of rational thinking. So
oh yeah. No, that's true. That's true. And since you brought that up, by the way, I do want to just quickly mention to you guys, the Hyundai in cars, not the in line. The in line is just an aesthetic package, but the in trim is with their nearly 300 horsepower direct injection motors. And of course, they pop and whiz and bang, they sound amazing. But if you get their small SUV, the Kona, in, that's available with all-wheel drive.
Yes.
And honestly, I think that that's going to be like when we talk about the future of tuner vehicles, I think that that's going to end up being one of those. The Kia Stinger, I think, is going to be another one because they didn't sell very well. They're rare-ish, but I don't think they carry a lot of value. I think you're going to be able to pick one up fairly cheapish in the next 5 years. But I think that the Kona In is going to be another one of those where it's going to kind of fly under the radar, but because it has that all-wheel drive, I mean, listen, it's direct injection. So you get a high-pressure fuel pump on it, you get a tune on it. I don't know what size turbo those run, but if they're, decently sized, if it's a T25,
I know what size I'm gonna run.
I don't know how much boost it's going to take to get this Hyundai into the 12s, but I know how much I'm going to use.
Yeah, the Hyundai N Kona, the new Mazda CX-30 with turbo all-wheel drive, even like the Escapes, turbo all-wheel drive. I think we've seen this proliferation of crossover vehicles with turbos and all-wheel drive, even to a lesser extent the Mitsubishi Eclipse Cross, which is hampered by a CVT. But you're going to see what happened in the 90s, I think, where there wasn't an aftermarket and they started developing an aftermarket. DSM stuff. There wasn't like this. It's not like in 1990 when the Eclipse came out and you get an Eclipse GST or GSX with a 4G65, 4G63 turbo. It's not like there was all of a sudden this aftermarket and you just walked down to Pep Boys and built yourself a 700 horsepower DSM. The aftermarket had to evolve from that.
No, you had to get a pair of pliers and smash your blow-off valve.
Oh my God, I can't believe you just brought that up. I was thinking the exact same thing. Take your blow-off valve and crush it in a vise so that it would hold 18 pounds instead of 12.
Yes. But anyway, I think that, if we're going to be riddled with crossover style vehicles that have potential for power plants and potentials for performance, it's very likely you're going to see people be like, well, all I got to do is up the boost by like 5-10 pounds. And hey, look, I'm into the 12s. We are living in a golden age of horsepower these days. The shitty slow cars have 120, 150 horsepower, and the fast cars have 300, 400, 700 horsepower.
Yep.
We've never lived in a time where you could walk down to the store and pay under $100,000 for a car that has 700 horsepower. And let alone like this Yaris or the Corolla that'll have 3 cylinders and 300 horsepower, 100 horsepower per cylinder.
Andy and I have ranted about this on the show so many times. Every car that I considered fast when I was younger is so fucking slow.
Yeah.
Like they're getting beat by Camry hybrids now.
All day, every day.
I feel like the first time I realized it was like in 2006 or something when the V6 Altima was running.
Yes.
And we're like, what? Why is that Altima so fucking fast? It's faster than all the Hondas. Like,
Yeah.
B18 swapped Hondas were getting like smoked by stock Altimas in like 2004. I don't know the exact model year. And we're like, something's happening.
I remember when Car and Driver did a thing and they said that I don't remember what year it was, Honda Accord was faster than a 69 Camaro 350 SS.
Yeah.
A front wheel drive Accord.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I made a meme of that where, the meme said something to the effect of, hot rodder laughs at your front wheel drive Honda, also hot rodder runs mid 15s. I remember the Toyota RAV4 V6 for a little while was the fastest vehicle in the Toyota lineup. That was 2007 or 8, something like that.
Yeah.
It would run a 13.8 because that 3.5 liter V6 was so potent. And guys, so I want you to keep in mind the Bronco Raptor is going to have the 3 liter engine, the 3 liter, EcoBoost engine from Ford. There's something else that's having a 3 liter EcoBoost engine. It's another one of the Raptor models. I don't think maybe it's the Ranger. Anyways, it doesn't matter. The point is we've had the 3 liter in the Explorer ST for years now. And those guys literally bolt-ons, tune, E85. Some dudes are running like race gas in them, of course. But they can get down into the 12s. I mean, like that, no problem. And we're talking about big, big vehicles. So I do think that there's some serious horsepower numbers on the rise. And strangely, it's coming from the SUVs. And that really kind of leads into our doob of the day. Can we go ahead and get into that? What do you guys think?
Do it.
Smoking deal or smoking a doobie. I mean, this just seems like the classic hot rod SUV to me. Coy and I, of course, talked about this some months ago when Dodge first announced that they were going to be doing a Durango Hellcat, and they sold so many pre-orders that they actually had to tell people, yes, we are going to extend the manufacturing period. I forget now, Coy, what they were going to make like 2,000, and they ended up getting so many pre-orders that they ended up making like 8,000. Does that sound right?
I don't know, but it was only 2,000 at first. It was very limited. They sold all those in like the first day. And I felt a little sorry for those guys because they sold them so fast and they were going to be such a limited run. It couldn't help but increase in value like immediately and forever. But then they were like, oh, wow, these sold so well that we're going to make a ton more, which I feel like when you're paying that much money for a limited production run vehicle and then the manufacturer's like, never mind, it's not as limited as we said. It's a little bit like, it feels like grounds for a lawsuit almost, but
there is some of that. It's sort of like Rivian when they told everybody, hey, by the way, these are going to cost 20% more than what we told you. And they applied that to the pre-orders as well. And people threw a shit fit. That only lasted 24 hours. Andy, do you remember that? Did you read?
I haven't heard about that with the Rivian. No.
Yeah. So with the Rivian, they kind of not quietly. I mean, everybody needed to know, of course, laws and such. But yeah, they increased their price for the Rivian R1T pre-orders by 15 to 20%, depending on what the packages were, because, chip shortage, supply chain problems, getting batteries made, stuff like that. Like they're more expensive to build. And Rivian ate a giant shit sandwich. It was 24, maybe 36 hours later that they were like, "Map, just kidding. If you have a pre-order, you're not going to pay them more." But they tried to slip it in there. Okay. And so, I mean, things happen, especially when it comes to pre-order vehicles. Now, the Durango SRT Hellcat, that's not supposed to be, I mean, this was a single run. I don't think they're ever going to make these again. And I honestly don't know how many are out there at this point. I don't even know if they've filled all of their pre-orders for them yet. But what I did was I went out and I found the absolute cheapest Durango Hellcat on the market. Now, anyone watching the video, they'll notice price, please call. One day ago, this said 91.5. And it was the cheapest Durango Hellcat on the market. The MSRP on these was, I believe it was 88 or 89,000. And so finding one of these that's not used all that much, even used. I mean, I looked at a whole bunch of others when I was figuring out which of these was the cheapest in the United States. We're talking about cars that have 10,000 miles on them. People are still asking 99,000, 100,000. I've seen as high as 130,000 from dealerships that clearly just never want to sell the thing. I don't know what the plan is. That's literally $50,000 over MSRP. I don't see how anyone would pay that kind of money. But if you wanted a Durango Hellcat, again, this says please call, but just a day ago, I mean, 18 hours ago, this said 91,580, making it the cheapest Durango Hellcat on the market. Let's talk about this for a second, boys. 12 to 17 miles to the gallon. Sounds about on par because you've got a 6.2 liter supercharged Hemi V8. It's the Hellcat motor, right? And they didn't detune it. It's all 707 horsepower.
You don't need a big motor to get 12 to 17. Ask any of the Overlander crowd.
The overloaders, as they're called, right?
Yeah.
Don't worry, because they're going to ask you how to get better gas mileage out of it.
Yes.
7 tons on there.
Here's something funny I found. They actually put on here off-road capability, ground clearance 8 inches, which, reminding everyone, that's worse than all of the pseudo Overlander vehicles we looked at, because come on, You're not going to be overlanding this thing. You're going to be at your local track running 10s.
I want to ask you guys this though. So I mean, this is a more modern version of the SRT8 Cherokee, right? More or less.
Trackhawk, yeah.
Trackhawk.
Trackhawk. I like those better. Like it just looks better, even though this is brand new to me.
I like the ridiculousness of this more than the ridiculousness of the Trackhawk. I've driven Trackhawks before, specifically one on a drive event with the Northwest Automotive Press Association. And it's just kind of like, this is crazy. So on that event, I drove a Hellcat Charger. I drove the Trackhawk, and then I drove the Durango 392. The 392 was, I liked it. It was fun. It sounded good. It could tow your boat. It was still fast enough. So I think I would actually dig the Durango Hellcat the most out of all those. I just, it's going to be the most practical. I mean, listen, nobody cares about the fuel economy on a Hellcat. If you're built, and it depends on what you want it for. If you want to do track days, like road racing days, you're probably going to want the car version. Maybe the Trackhawk Cherokee.
Can I tell you what I want one of these for specifically?
Overlanding.
No. I want to tow a race car to the drag strip, unhook from my race car, and then solely race my tow vehicle. And then hook up to my race car that I never have unloaded yet. And
I love it.
I want to do that every weekend, all summer long, till I become a lead. Like people can be like, "There's this dude that's at the local drag strip. He tows this sweet race car there. He unhooks. He races the Durango all day. He hooks, and I'll be talked about for years."
Oh my God, you could
tell their grandkids about me.
You know, you could also like tow a tiny house behind it, and then just like use it as your pit area and all that stuff, and then like just, you know, sleep in the house at night. I don't know, but I do like your idea of towing a race car that you could just hard park the race car behind it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So I have a side-by-side comparison here, you guys. Front end of the Durango Hellcat and front end of the Trackhawk. The Trackhawk, the Jeep Trackhawk, excuse me, it's Grand Cherokee. I don't know. It's got a very Grand Cherokee look to it, while the Dodge Durango has a much more like police interceptor look to it. I think I prefer the looks of the Durango, to be honest with you.
To defend myself, in my mind, I was thinking like the 2006, 2007 Trackhawk, which has a big square headlight. Looks quite a bit different, and I think looks better. I agree. The Durango probably looks better than this generation of Trackhawk.
I have this thing, and I've always had this thing for underdog vehicles, which is why all my cars are slow. But I've always had this thing for the underdog, and the idea of, you know, you're at the track or wherever, and like, you know, dude pulls up next to you, and then you smoke them in a freaking Durango. I just love it. I love that idea, and I mean, yeah, you could do it in the Cherokee too, but I don't know. There's something about putting the big fast engine in the lumpiest, not best looking or best car out there, and being able to. I'm still waiting for the Pacifica Hellcat myself, but.
And if I may, these are 5,700 pounds, whether you do the Trackhawk or the Durango.
Oh,
they're as close to 6,000 pounds as you can get.
Wow, that's a lot of inertia.
Oh.
Yeah.
It's
got
6,000 pounds with me in it.
Yeah. Well, but it's got monster, I mean, absolutely monster brakes. And of course, it's sitting on giant rubber. I don't know. I mean, I'm kind of with you, Coy, from this angle. Again, if you're listening on the podcast, please do come and check out the live stream video that we do, because we're going through all of these photos live. So I'm kind of with you, Coy. I mean, this has a good look in the front end, but again, there's something tough. Like if you see this Durango Hellcat coming towards you, I would probably slow down because it looks like a cop.
Yeah.
I hope somebody gets this white Durango and then puts the A-pillar spotlight on it. And then realizes that everyone thinks they're a cop, and then does 55 in front of them and is afraid to speed and lives a a slow, torturous life. There's nothing worse than having a car that looks like a cop car. You'll never be able to speed because everyone in front of you gets scared and slows down. It's horrible.
Oh,
Andy, I have a story for you. One time, Coy and I were in his S2000, and we were blasting down the freeway. I don't know, 110, 120. We were in a hurry to get somewhere, obviously. And there's a car pulled off to the side. And it turns out it's a Crown Vic, excuse me. And Coy's just like, shit, there's a cop right there. And I'm like, oh shit, there's a cop. And he's like, buck. He's literally 2 feet on the brake pedal, standing on it, slows down to 70 miles an hour. We roll past, and there is this hunchback little old man that is staring at a map with a marker out. And Coy's just like, you son of a bitch! I can't believe you fucking bitch! You get off the fucking road! He was so angry. And that was the funniest thing to me at the time, because obviously I wasn't driving, but that feeling, I think everybody can relate to that, right?
Oh, for sure.
Coy, am I exaggerating?
No, that happened. And that's not the funniest cop story with me that happened. When I had my Oldsmobile, a cop was following us. And I don't like cops following me because I was 16 and they just find a reason to pull me over. So we were in town. I just pulled over, blinker, everything. Cop went by and I just pulled out right back behind the cop. And I was like, there. Now he'll never notice me again. About 4 seconds later, the cop pulled over and I went by and he pulled right back out behind me. And I was like, oh, fuck, I didn't think this through. And Andy highly enjoyed it because he knew I was about to get pulled over.
I didn't enjoy it. I just knew that I was in the passenger seat and I didn't have any contraband on me. So I was like, man, nothing's going to happen. Coy's going to get harassed for about 15 minutes, I mean, I remember getting pulled over one time in my all-wheel drive Protege, which, Andy, I never overlanded. I'm sorry to say. I actually lowered it. Sad. But, 340 all-wheel drive horsepower. I had no interior in the thing at the time. I think even the passenger seat was out. And so this cop pulled me over. I was heading home from Coy's house. It was probably 11 p.m., midnight. And this cop pulls me over and he's like, hey, you got anything in this car that I need to know about? And I'm not typically assholes to cops, but I just looked at him and I said, you've got a flashlight, look for yourself. He shines the flashlight back and he can just see straight into the trunk. Like there's zero. There is one racing bucket and nothing else, which should have been a huge tip off for him, by the way. But he was just kind of like, oh, okay, well, you're not hiding anything under the seat. And I'm like, it's a fiberglass bucket. There's nothing under here. Yeah. And, he went and ran all my stuff and came back. And then I think I ended up doing like 130 on the way home. I raced a couple of Hondas. But, and I had the Mazda 323 GTR gearbox in that. Yeah. And it's super short geared. So I topped out at 140. And believe it or not, I get Ricer flybys from guys because if I topped out, then I just slow down. They're like, my Honda can do 100 and whatever, I don't know. Anyways, that's besides the point. The point is when you're driving something like this, I feel like you might be flying under the radar a little bit. Yes, no, am I wrong?
I think especially from a distance, nobody's going to be like, oh, I bet you that thing's really fast. Or be like, there's a white SUV. Who cares? And that's, again, I love the underdog. I love the sleeper thing. And this is almost factory sleeper. Like, yeah, it's got the hood scoop and the big giant wheels and all that stuff. But, it's just not. And I'll tell you what, even people who know what they are, and this happens with the Trackhawks too, as I understand, even people who know what they are, they'd be like, is that just a regular drone? Is that just an RT? Maybe it's just an RT. Oh no, dude, it's got a Hellcat badge. Oh, dude, that thing's gonna be really fast, or whatever. But that's the beauty of a vehicle like that. That's like putting a ridiculous engine in in your Chevy Biscayne or whatever back in the day. It's like, oh, is it fast? It might be fast. I can't tell. The first thing I do is peel the Hellcat badges off the thing, probably.
Oh, but, yes.
First thing I would do is find someone with a white Durango and trade them all trim. So like I just have stock regular brand Durango bumpers. I trade them wheels, everything.
It's funny you say that because I was looking up Durango Hellcat on Google and I just put in Durango Hellcat And the first photo that pops up is this super generic. It's a super generic photo of like the base trim V6 Durango, like because it's Google or whatever. I don't even know where it's probably from like Auto Trader or something like that. Oh, it's actually from Dodge, but yeah, that's the first thing you see, and I'm like, yeah, like you put the 17-inch wheels on it, and you know, you de-trim it and make it a real sleeper, you know.
Mm-hmm. And I want to point out to you guys too, this thing can tow technically, it's rated to tow 8,200 pounds, and the 0 to 60 time is 3.6 seconds, which is roughly the same as the 800 horsepower Challenger Hellcat Red Eye. And these are clearing the quarter mile at 12 seconds flat. I mean, everything's been tested has been around 12, 12.1, 12.2, 112 to 115 miles an hour, as tested by virtually every magazine. And so you can't tell me that with a few bolt-ons and a tune, and come on, intake, exhaust, but the tune, that's the big one, you know,
Right.
especially for us living at sea level.
Yeah.
Because when they build a production vehicle, they have to make it run just as good at 6,000 feet
Right.
as they do at 0 feet. But, you know, we put a tune on it. Maybe we run, I don't know. I mean, 93 octane, ethanol free, 93 octane. That's as close as you're going to get to race gas, except for, you know, in Portland where it sells E85. But I mean, you could potentially be talking about an 11-second Durango here. This is insane.
It's like an 11-second house. It's like so big and so heavy. And but I just, we're all about the same age. But like, can you imagine 20 years ago? Look at the performance 20 years ago, right? Like in 2002, 2002, I think I maybe still had my Sentra SER, and you know, it ran a 15.5, you know, with bolt-on intake, header, exhaust, bolt-ons. You know,
Yeah, but they made that
15.5.
sweet anime video when they released it, bro.
The 6-speed.
Yeah, this was a 99 SE Limited, so it was a sedan with the SR20. But you look at that, and even I had a 98 Prelude SH with 200 horsepower. Like Corey was saying, like everything is slow as fuck now, and you know, I mean, a fast car back then was like, dude runs like 13.5 in a Honda, and a B18 swapped Honda, or like, you know, full on drag car was running like 11.8 maybe, you know, and now you
S2000, which was basically stock at the time when I took it the drag strip, ran a 14.5.
Yeah.
That's like a legit awesome sports car that people were wildly envious of me
Right.
of. Ran a 14.5 in the factory.
We had a buddy that was considering a Chevy Cavalier, but it was some hot rod version of the Cavalier. I forget what the trim package was. And he wanted it because it ran a mid 15. And that was fast back then.
Yeah. It's amazing how times have changed. But granted, like that Sentra I bought that ran 15.5s and handled all right for what it was. And you know, I had it on KYB AGXs and iBox and all that stuff. But that was like a $15,000 car, brand new. You can't buy a Mirage for $15,000 anymore.
Right.
78 horsepower. It's
You know,
it's just incredible.
Since we talked a little about mods for Durango, to me, I know Andy, you're saying tune and exhaust. To me, there's only one mod that I would do to this other than the debadging stuff.
Nitrous.
Thank you. There is no, it's a giant house. I would put one of those Staples easy buttons on the dash with a massive laser pointer arming switch. And look, I'm not saying I'm going to moonshot this thing, but I guarantee you with all the Hellcat motors out there, I can get online and figure out exactly what I can safely run on this. And it's got to be at least 100 shot.
Oh, I guarantee. So here's the thing.
150 shot.
I think that 1,000 horsepower on these Hellcat motors is pretty much a guarantee. From what I've seen, a lot of dudes, I mean, they'll put a few things on the motor and then they'll get a smaller pulley for the Hellcat supercharger, or they'll just swap the supercharger out, period. But there are a lot of dudes without cracking the motors open that'll make 1,000 horsepower on these. So if you wanted an upgrade path with these, you know, a bolt-on supercharger for these can't be more than or $5,000. You need to address the fuel system, obviously. And I don't know if you can really run 1,000 horsepower on like pump gas. You might have to do an E30 mix or an E85 or something like that. But I could be wrong. It could be 1,000 horsepower on pump gas. I don't know.
So what I'm saying though is that that's awesome, but that's power all the time. You pull up next to some midlife crisis guy in a vet, and you go to race him. He's gonna win, right?
Mhm.
If you have the supercharger, you're probably gonna win, or at least give him a hard run for your money. If you have a $150 shot of nitrous in this, you get to scream too soon, Junior.
I would also like to point out the fact that I think we're all midlife people now, by the way, just so it'd probably be a boomer and a vet these days.
Yeah.
Well,
I
either a
am
boomer
midlife
or-
crisis guy. I am him.
I've seen your vans.
Yeah.
Ich bin eine midlife crisis.
Crisis guy. So I was like in traffic. I'm like, yeah, some like midlife crisis. I said something like, yeah, some middle-aged dude freaking cut me off. I'm like, wait a minute, I am middle-aged dude.
Dude, I'm making Ronald Reagan quotes. Like, clearly I'm middle-aged.
But that all this being said, I like there's really nothing not to like other than price tags. But
Yeah.
deal or Doob on this, it's the cheapest one in the nation. So you have to say deal though. Like, but obviously all these are marked up insanely. Like,
Right.
do we Doob all of them just because they're marked up? Like,
Dude, I was at a Dodge dealer in like, I think it was like maybe a year and a half ago, and they had an SRT Durango on the floor, and it was $78,000.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that does not sound like a good deal to me. I mean, granted, my most expensive vehicle is like $16,000 in my driveway right now, but still, if this is the cheapest, I mean, listen, somebody has the cheapest Bugatti Veyron too, so that would be the best deal on Veyrons. But like, I think this is a deal for what it is, assuming the price really is not. Please call.
We got to
So-
break this down just a little bit, you guys, because it's a giant SUV. It's brand new. This one, I'm sorry, I don't see the mileage on it, but when I looked at this, I literally a couple of days ago before they removed information from it, said it had 30 miles. It's brand new. It's showroom stock. It's not a trade-in or anything. Like, it's brand new, which you would expect with that kind of dealer markup, right? So, but you got to think about you're literally just buying into this performance. And what I'm trying to bring to this whole concept for me is I'm thinking about like the new Jeep Grand Wagoneer, comfortable, safe, third row seating, all of that. You can spec those out to $100,000. Grand Cherokee, anything with a third row. If it's a third row V8 powered SUV, you're already kind of in the ballpark. And so that's kind of my whole thing as I'm looking at these and I'm going, once you get to the point where you're looking at a Durango or a Jeep Grand Cherokee or something like that, hell, dude, if you're looking at a fully loaded F-150 with the 3.5 EcoBoost in it, you could be looking at $70,000, $80,000.
Yep.
And so keeping all of that in mind for me, not to jump in front of you guys, I apologize. But when I'm looking at this at like a $91,500, $92,000 range, which if you go up to $92,000, there are a few that are available in that range, $92,500, $92,800. But again, this is the cheapest at $91,500 that I've seen. And I'm trying to factor this in. Is this going to be kind of like a collector vehicle? You know, realistically, in 15 years, if I don't put too many miles on this, could I be running across the Mecum block or the Barrett-Jackson block? If it's still in good condition, is it going to appreciate in value? And you guys know that this is a difficult conversation to have because when it comes to cars like this, they'll often go down in value before they go up in value. And you never really know where exactly they're going to land. But just pure enjoyment, if I'm not putting 1 million miles on this a year, it could theoretically hold some of its value. And at $91,500 for a brand new limited production vehicle, it's making 710 horsepower. I'm going to classify this as like a soft deal. If we're going on a scale of 1 to 10, this is going to hit about a 4.5, 5 to me. I'm going soft deal. I think that if you're in the market for one of these, you're looking for one of these, you can afford the $1,100 a month at 28% ARP. This might be worth like driving down from Virginia to come and get, because a lot of dealerships, excuse me, they're trying to charge 110, 120, 130,000. Like I said, I did a little bit of research into this, jumped on Auto Trader, jumped on TrueCar, even jumped on Marketplace, started looking at where these are landing. And even the used ones, even guys that have put 10, 15,000 miles on these cars, they're asking 110,000 because they're, again, limited run. They're rare. They were only made for that short period of time. And at 91.5, if I was in the market for something like this, like let's pretend I was Cletus McFarlane. Okay, let's pretend I was Stefan Papadakis with my YouTube channel, and I was looking for a new tow vehicle. I would run down to Florida and buy one of these.
I got a hard deal this myself, because as far as like it retaining and or gaining value, I think if we look through the SRT8 family of vehicles, I don't really see anything that could lead me to believe that. And I could be wrong, but I'm just you can find the old SRT8, early 2000s Cherokees for like in the 20s. Like they haven't held anything. And I'm sure those brand new, I think they were high 40s, obviously not near as expensive as this, but I don't really see it being a collector vehicle. It's cool. I wish it was. But what I do see, if this cheapest one in the nation and other dealers are asking $20,000 more, the ultimate way to say if it's a deal or not, can I turn around and flip this for more than I bought it for?
Yeah.
I'm going to take this thing. I'm going to buy it and I'm going to say, leave it in the showroom. It brings people in. It's good for you, but I just don't have a place for it because I'm going to take some pictures. I'm putting this on Bring a Trailer. And I'm probably going to sell this for $130.
Oh,
Bring a Trailer markup, bro. Who God knows. I might get
holy
it.
shit.
That
Is good point. Wow.
So I got a hard deal this because I'm gonna flip it.
Andy, Coy's playing 40 chess over here, bro.
Yeah, for real. Yeah. You know what? I sort of land somewhere in between you guys on this one. And immediately when you said 4.5, 5, Andy, I thought, yeah, that's what I was going to say was a 5. But listening to Coy's Ponzi scheme of bring a trailer, I do think that he's got a point there. I think that this is probably going to be one of those vehicles that maybe 20 years from now, people are like, that was so bonkers. Like they put that SRT Hellcat engine in a freaking Durango, and it appeals to all three people who really want one. And I think that it's probably not drawing people into Napleton Dodge like maybe some of the more sought after Charger Hellcats or Challenger Hellcats. It's the freak show, But listen, I also fully believe that what brings people into the circus is the freak show.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is the one that everybody loves to go, man, that's crazy. Like, can you believe they put that in a Durango? But I don't think they're probably selling as many of these as they would of the other versions. I don't think it just doesn't have the appeal. It's a bit lumpier. It's a bit, fatter and all that stuff. Now I like it because it's just not, it's the weirdo, and I like the weirdos. But I think that, in 20, 30 years, it'll probably bring out some people who thought that was cool. But I think that if you were just playing a numbers game and you don't really want it, like you don't love it, you're not like in love with it, bat that sucker.
Yeah.
Get your bat, somebody will pay the bat tax on it. I mean, I just saw I should see what it went for. I just saw like a 93 Suzuki Sidekick go for like $12,000 today on bat. I'm like, what? Like, what parallel universe is this?
We watched a Isuzu Impulse RS, and it was not low mileage. It was like 120,000 miles.
On that show.
I was on that show.
Yeah. Oh yes, yeah, you were. That sold for $12,000.
It's incredible. So, you put something kind of weird like that on bat, maybe something like this. Maybe you you'd laugh your way all the bank, all the way to the bank, and then maybe buy the Charger or Challenger Hellcat that you actually wanted. I don't know. We'll see. But it still kind of appeals to me.
It appeals to me, but because some horrible guy did the Hellcat Pacifica render, this became, and this came after that, this became a what we wanted versus what we got meme. Like,
Yeah.
the guys like me and Andy that do like the weird crap, we like, if this was a Pacifica Hellcat, I'd be losing my mind and
Yeah,
trying to
same.
think about how I could convince my wife to spend $100,000 on one.
I would. You could just call me Jeffrey Tubin because I'd be sitting here just like stroking it on live stream.
Yeah, because it's like, wow, that's kind of a deep pull.
It reminds me of when Car and Driver, about, I don't know, maybe 10, 15 years ago.
Did they have one of their editors like jerking off on camera?
No, that's another story. No, they took a Mazda CX-5, a CX. No, what was not the CX? Mazda 5, the minivan, and they're like, well, it's just a Mazda 3, so we're going to swap the Mazda Speed stuff into it, and it ended up not being nearly as straightforward as I thought it would be, and it ended up being this big, long rigmarole. But anyway, they made a Mazda Speed 5, and I was like, oh God, like, I'm so hot and bothered by this thing. It's amazing. And Chrysler goes ahead and they do this, which is close, but the Hellcat Pacifica would just be a total.
Yeah, it's a what we wanted versus what we got, and it's still awesome. But you know, the other one like that, I think it was Sport Compact Car, did a R32 Golf, and all that all-wheel drive system, everything bolted into a Volkswagen New Beetle.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
All that was a direct swap, and they had this like beast mode Beetle.
I love it. I was hoping you were going to say they put it into an EOS or a Cabriolet or something, but
the one I was thinking about was you get a Mercury Capri, what's it called? The Mercury Capri XR2.
XR2.
You take the drivetrain and the engine out of that and you put it into a Festiva, and all of the wiring harness plugs right in, and actually the ECU plugs right into the stock wiring harness, and now you have a 1.6 liter dual overhead cam turbo Festiva. That's always been kind of a bucket list item for me.
That's a BP, isn't it? Isn't that a turbo BP engine?
That's the B6T. I had a BPT swapped Festiva. We called it Festivus Prime. Coy can tell you stories about that. It made 320 wheel horsepower. It was not. So, Andy, I have stories upon stories with that Festiva. I remember one time at a stoplight, I was next to a Honda Odyssey, and it was 2-lane. We were going down to 1 lane, and I was like, oh, no problem. I'll just pass this Odyssey. So the light turns green. I'm in first gear, no traction. I mean, just the tires go up in smoke. I'm blowing flames out the back of this car, you know. Grab second gear, still no traction. Blowing fucking flames out of this car, just bouncing off the rev limiter, just bob, 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 bob. You know, it's got a T3 Super 60 on it. It's making crazy pounds of boost. Throw it in third gear. By that point, my lane has ended and the Odyssey's already passed me and pulled in front.
I love it. There's horsepower and there's usable horsepower, right? I mean, that's fantastic. I love everything about it. My friend Petrie, he swapped in an entire Honda Fit engine into a Festiva, and it's like, you know, it was like, what was it, like 120 horsepower? But that would be so much fun. I can't imagine 300 horsepower in a Festiva, but I'd like to think about it.
The only thing that car was good for was racing street bikes on the freeway. Literally the only thing it was good for. And even then that was scary because there was only one headlight because the turbo was where the other one was. Going that fast in a Festiva on the freeway at night and then being essentially blind is it's horrifying and exhilarating. It's a gun, so you can imagine how that feels at $140. Like, it could take off at any minute.
I'm mildly titillated right now.
We'll fill you in with more stories. I mean, Coy pretty succinctly summed it up there for me. Listen, I think we need to sum up this Durango Hellcat. So at $91,500, I never thought I'd say this about a deal due, but I think I'm going to deal this one. Coy?
I agree. I got to deal it. Not because I think it's going to increase in value. I feel like with the electrification of everything and electric stuff being fast and the rising gas prices. And who knows, any day we could show Russia why we don't have universal health care. And, when gas is $9 a gallon in the future, I don't see people wanting one of these. So I think it's a good deal because of the time we're in right now and the possibility to sell it and make money. But yeah, I got a hard deal. I got a hard deal this.
I'm gonna go deal on this one too. It's the best price of what's out there. It's unique. It's always gonna be unique. It's never gonna be like, oh, there's one of those Durango Hellcats. Nobody's ever gonna say that. This is a unique car, available for a good price for what it is. I say deal.
There it is,
people don't say, oh, that's a Durango Hellcat. They say, fuck, that was a Durango Hellcat.
Good head and taillights, right?
Yeah.
That's right.
Because after he tries, you're like, wow, that sounds throaty. And then you're like, damn it, I'm getting wasted by an SUV. Fuck.
But as always, you guys, if you think that it's a deal, if you think it's a doob, if you think we're way off or you think we're right on point, we always want to hear those. We do appreciate you guys jumping into the comments and letting us know what your thoughts are on these, because in a way, as iron sharpens iron, man sharpens man, and we want to hone our skills when it comes to these deal doobs. So please, if you're listening, drop us a comment. If you're watching, drop us a comment. Let us know, is it a deal? Is it a doob? Where do you land on it? But for right now, I think that's where we all land on the Durango Hellcat.
Smoking deal or smoking a doobie.
You guys, that is of course the last segment of the day. I want to thank you both for being on. Andy Lilienthal, you are a treasure. You're a gentleman. You're a scholar. You always know what you're talking about, and you always bring your A game. Thank you so much for being here. Would you please tell everyone what your relevant links are?
Sure. So at my day job, where I'm at Warren Industries or warren.com and all the associated social media, my after hours gig is Crankshaft Culture. We're united by horsepower, and we are at crankshaftculture.com. We're at Crankshaft Culture on Instagram, Facebook, and at Crankshaft Cult on Twitter.
And by the way, Coy and I are both active over there because those are great groups, fantastic groups. You guys are crushing it over there. Crankshaft Culture is taking the world by storm, and I really do want everyone to go and check that out. And while they're doing it, please come and check us out. Facebook.com/The Horsepower Hour. Groups is, of course, Facebook.com/group/The Horsepower Hour. Instagram is at Horsepower Hour. The TikTok is at _horsepower_hour. If you want to get in contact with Coy, that is the Horsepower Hour at gmail.com. Yes, Coy?
Absolutely. And once again, Andy, thanks for coming on. It's no wonder why you're so wanted on so many podcasts. It's always a treasure having you on, since similar ages and similar nostalgic feelings about cars and things. I always enjoy it. So
hey, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me on. I always have a great time on this show. I hope I can do it again. And thanks again for having me on.
You are the man. And you guys, once again, go and check out those links. Seriously, jump in the links underneath of the podcast. Everything we talked about here today, Andy's links, Coy's links, they're all underneath of the podcast. So please do go and check that out. We thank you for that. And if you want to tell a friend about the podcast, that is what keeps the wind in our sails. Once again, we want to thank our fake sponsor of the day. And next week, we will have another. I don't know what it is yet, but we'll come up with that. Coy, Andy, thank you so much, my friends. And for all of you out there, thank you. And we will see you next time.